deadline. It is going to, I think, conclude at 3 p.m. on Thursday, and a lot of activity has already been in the works, has already been in the mix. And yesterday, we had a number of blockbuster trades, but I have to start with the Indiana Pacers and the Sacramento Kings, two franchises that haven't necessarily been in the news for the best of reasons as of yesterday. And these two teams completed a blockbuster trade. So the Sacramento Kings have traded their promising second-year guard, Tyrese Halliburton, who they took 12th overall in the 2020 NBA draft, to the Indiana Pacers for Domantas Sabonis, the two-time All-Star. Now, the official haul that the Sacramento Kings are going to be getting from the Indiana Pacers is Domantas Sabonis, Jeremy Lamb, Justin Holiday, and a 2023 second-round pick. The Pacers are fully receiving Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, and Tristan Thompson. So a 7-player trade in the mix. And let me first say, because Domantas Sabonis, this is a two-time All-Star. This is a guy who's been averaging this season 19 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists. This is just his 6th season in the league. I think people still forget how young Domantas Sabonis is, probably because they get clouded by his dad, Arvydas Sabonis, the 7 years that he played in the NBA. And he was also a beast in the NBA during those 7 seasons. A couple times averaged 16 points, 14 points per game. For his career, he averaged 12, 7, and like a couple assists. So he was a really good player, Arvydas Sabonis, but not on the same level as his son, Domantas Sabonis. Let me first say this. I think that this is a really good trade for both teams. Now, when I say a really good trade, I'm not suggesting that this is necessarily going to lead to championships for either of these organizations and either of these franchises, but I do think that it's important to kind of revitalize a fan base. And here's why I really like this trade for both teams. I think that both teams kind of won this trade, but if I had to look at one organization and say which one got a lot better than the other, to me, it's the Sacramento Kings. Because I have always been extremely, extremely bullish about Domantas Sabonis. I've been preaching his name for the last 3-4 years, ever since he's stayed at OKC and really got some runway. People kind of forget that the way that he landed in Indiana was because OKC traded for Paul George. And that was part of the way that they ended up sending Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis over to Indiana. And that's what really kind of allowed Sabonis to flourish a bit more. And this is a guy who's got such finesse around the rim. He's an above-average defender. You wouldn't think he is, but he is so deft around the rim. He's got touch with both hands. He can hit the mid-range. He can dribble the ball. He can put the ball on the floor. I think he's competed in the NBA Skills Challenge competitions at the All-Star games plenty of times. This is a really versatile, really talented player. And the thing about it is, I think, first of all, he should have been an All-Star for perhaps the last 3 seasons. Obviously, he has been the last 2 seasons. But I also think this is an opportunity for the Sacramento Kings to see more clearly who they have in De'Aaron Fox. Because that's really the question here. That's really the purpose behind this trade is, what do we have in De'Aaron Fox? I know he's having a down year, but his down year in comparison to last year is still 21 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists. Now, the shooting hasn't quite been the same. 45% from the floor, 26% from 3. That is quite abysmal for a guy of his standards. But I still like De'Aaron Fox, and I think that if you're the Sacramento Kings, you've invested so much money in De'Aaron Fox that to not try to pair him with some established all-star and not just a bunch of projects has to be valued, has to be your top priority. And that's why I understand this move, because as much as I really like Tyrese Halliburton, and boy, has he come on late over the last 2.5 months, really this entire season, he's been fantastic. 14 points, 7 assists, 41% from the three-point line for Halliburton. In fact, he's the only King that he has started the most games for the Kings this year, 51 games played, 34 minutes. So I see the promise in Tyrese Halliburton, but at the same time, they've had three guys that play the same position: De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Halliburton, and Davion Mitchell. Those are three guys that, in essence, are serving the same purpose. And I think that right now, you can't move forward and allow each one of these guys individually to excel when they're all on the same team. And so you look at Halliburton, you look at Mitchell. Both of those two guys made the Rising Stars game. So you can see the promise from both of them. You can see the promise from both of them. But I just think that for me, you can't put the fan base through several more years of turmoil, several more years of incompetency, several more years of not really a competitive roster. This is still a Kings team that's been struggling to even make the play-in tournament. They can't seem to make the play-in tournament. And to be honest, I really love Davion Mitchell. I know he was the Summer League MVP. The guy's been still averaging 10 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists. He's a defensive stopper. But now you allow De'Aaron Fox to kind of slide into his more natural combo guard position at the one. Davion Mitchell can start alongside him. He only gets about 25 minutes per game. And I think that the two of them can actually flourish together. I think that the two of them can flourish together. And now you've got Sabonis in the mix. And again, I'm not saying that they're going to win a championship, but at least you see what you have with multiple kind of above average players: De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis. And now you give Davion Mitchell more runway. The reason why I don't think it was outlandish to make this move for the Kings is because we've seen certain guys within their first year, within their first 2 years, take off and look like all-stars. We saw Doncic do it. We've seen LaMelo Ball do it. So it's not to suggest that Tyrese Halliburton isn't going to have a fantastic NBA career, because I do think he is, but I think that had he been showing, he's averaging 20 points per game, he's playing at an all-star level, well, maybe the Kings don't make this trade. And that's why I also think this benefits the Indiana Pacers, because they also kind of had a log jam with Turner and Sabonis both kind of clogging up the middle, serving similar, different, but in many ways very similar purposes. And now perhaps with Tyrese Halliburton, if you provide a fresh opportunity for him in a new environment where he's not in essence held in captivity and given a chance to succeed and really thrive and flourish, well, maybe he can. Maybe he just can. And the Indiana Pacers have always been a vexing team for me, because when you look on paper, they've always had a lot of really talented B-plus guys, a really deep roster. But then they obviously just shipped Karis LeVert, and Malcolm Brogdon's been out. TJ Warren has been missing time. He's been out indefinitely. But it's a very good roster, but I don't think that they necessarily ever had that singular guy. Now, Chris Duarte, who they drafted, I think is fantastic, and perhaps he and Tyrese Halliburton can be that new kind of starting backcourt for Coach Rick Carlisle, and they can kind of go off together, which I think would be an interesting pairing. But for the Indiana Pacers, I think they also had to make a move because, again, they were kind of just treading water, even with Sabonis. They really weren't going anywhere, and I just think that something had to be done. And for the Kings, obviously, when it comes to their ownership, their front office group, Vivek Ranadian, he's not a patient owner. He's not a patient owner, or Renadive, pardon. he's not a patient owner. We saw Vlade Divac used to be the GM. Now he's out of there because they didn't reach the postseason. Luke Walton got fired midway through the year. So this has kind of been a dumpster fire. They needed to change things up. And the Pacers, again, I think that they're obviously banking on Halliburton and Duarte to erupt. The only difference is I'm not sure if they have that go-to guy, if they've got that individual player that can make the difference. But you had to find out. You had to find out. And I think that this was the only way. And I truly am intrigued by who they can be. And perhaps, and so I really don't think this was a bad trade for either side. I think the Kings edged out because they got the more established, the more proven player. But I think that Halliburton can still thrive with the Pacers. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do over there.